Welcome, Queen. Have you ever found yourself in a meeting and as you were speaking, you were interrupted? And in that moment, you thought to yourself, should I speak up or should I just let this go? If you can relate, stay tuned because by the end of this video, you are going to be equipped to know exactly how to respond without losing your composure or your position in the conversation. Because here's the thing, most women don't lose their voice because they don't have something to say. They lose their voice the moment they're interrupted and they don't. So, first things first, we must recognize that there is a pattern taking place when we are interrupted as we are speaking. It's called a conversational pattern. And that means it's not random, but it does let others know whether or not they should continue or they can continue this pattern or whether or not they should not continue in this conversational pattern. And when you don't reclaim your voice, you teach the room to move without you. And typically, when women are interrupted, they do these three common things. They pause and wait. They try to come back in the conversation later, or they make the decision to let it go so that they can avoid the tension that comes with having to reclaim the conversation, their space in the conversation. And while these responses seem composed, they are actually costing the woman in question her position. So recognize there is a conversational shift that takes place when you are interrupted. Because the moment you are interrupted, control did not disappear. It was transferred because the conversation didn't end. Your position in the conversation shifted because it changed. And high capacity women often default to three common things when this happens. And they choose to speak up. They can tend to go into explaining mode where they are over explaining. They can soften their tone because they are trying to make sure that they do not create unnecessary tension or argument. And they can tend to try to manage the perceptions of the people in the room or of that person that they may be speaking to who interrupted them. And again, all of these things aim to reduce or avoid tension. But here's what I need you to know. There are times we must lean into strategic tension. Not for the sake of having conflict just to have conflict, but for the willingness to have and keep structure in the conversation. So strategically, what does this look like? Well, practically, I'm going to give you some examples so you can actually see what it looks like in an actual conversation. Because interruption does not require a speech, it requires a decision. And every room and every space is not the same. So every response to being interrupted should not be the same. And that means it's wise to be on the lookout for these three things as it relates to being interrupted before you enter the conversation again. Number one, reclaiming. Meaning, do you need to reclaim the conversation or reclaim the floor? If so, that means that you need a quick, in the moment response. Secondly, do you need to redirect the conversation? Meaning you just need to keep the conversation on the same track it was already on. Or lastly, do you need to correct behavior? Meaning you need to address the behavior of the person who interrupted you as you were speaking. Getting this right is critical because you don't need more words. You need the right move for the right moment. Because if you make the wrong move in this moment, it can actually take the conversation to the left. and you don't want that. So if you are interrupted by someone who is in leadership, you could simply say to that person, I'd like to finish my point. Now, for some people in leadership, that may be a little too blunt. So you could also say, and use their name when you say this. I'm going to use mine. Sam, I want to make sure I complete this point because it actually connects to what you were sharing. With peers, meaning people who are on the same level as you, you could simply say, let me complete this thought. Now, if that's a little too blunt for you, I understand. You could also stretch it out and make it just a tad bit longer. You don't want to be long-winded, but you could make it a little bit longer and address them by name as well. And say to them, again, I'm going to use my name, Sam, let me finish this thought. Then I'd like to hear your perspective. Or maybe you're in a new space or simply an unfamiliar space, meaning you don't quite know the room or how the people in the room will respond. You could simply say, I'm not done yet. This signals to the room that you were not finished speaking. Or again, you may feel like that's just a little bit too short for you. You can make it personalized. If you know their name, you can call them by name. Again, I'll use mine. Sam, I'm not done yet. Give me a moment to complete that or to complete my thought. Then continue speaking. In each of these examples, after you give the initial statement, then continue speaking. You've been clear, you've been concise, and that means that the room is aware that you were not finished with what you had to say, meaning low key, you interrupted me. And I would like to finish saying what I was saying. Now here it is. The point here is to remember that as you let the room know that you were not finished speaking, you're not offering an apology, you're not over explaining, and you're not asking for permission to finish speaking. You want to make it known that you had the floor, and again, you're reclaiming the floor. And there is going to be nuance, again, depending on who it is that interrupted you and the room that you are in. And that's where your discernment has to come into play. And I can't tell you that because I don't know what room or space you're going to be in when you experience this interruption. The key here is that you don't enter the conversation or re-enter the conversation by simply just sitting still and waiting. You re-enter the conversation by continuing. And that means completing your thought. So there's an identity shift that has to happen. And it does not mean that you need to become louder. You don't need to become louder. And oftentimes that's how conflict can come about, because we think, oh, this person interrupted me. Now we can tend to feel disrespected. Then our voice is raised, then their voice is raised, and now we got two people at each other's throat, and it doesn't have to go like that. This is simply about holding your place in the conversation, because composure is not silence. Composure is control. And this is exactly why I teach the 4 conversations, because before you respond, you need to identify what is actually happening in the conversation and in the room with this person, because every moment does not require the same conversation. So if you've ever found yourself after having a conversation or after leaving a room thinking, I should have said something, or I should have said that differently, this is where a shift needs to happen. Not in your confidence, but in your response to the moment that conversations change and you're in the room. And inside my live training, I actually walk you through in real time how to identify these shifts so that you can stay clear, calm, and composed without second guessing yourself. And you can register for when the conversation goes left, how to stay clear, calm, and in control, even when emotions rise. And I'll leave the registration information in the description box and pinned in the comment section. So today, I want you to remember that even when you're interrupted in a conversation, you don't have to let that be the end of what you have to say in the conversation. As always, I am C.E. Sam, telling you that 24 hours doesn't seem long, but in 24 hours, you can change your life. So go ahead and do something life-changing now.